Welcome to Season 2, Episode 8 of Angela Watson's Truth for Teachers. I'm your host, Angela Watson, and I'm here to speak life, encouragement, and truth into the minds and hearts of educators and get you energized for the week ahead. Today, I'm going to share some tips to help you work a 40-hour week as a teacher, shaving 10 or more hours from your work week. Visit truthforteachers.com to read the blog post, get links to recommended resources, and to share your thoughts on the show. Whenever I mention a 40-hour work week for teachers, people tend to have one of two objections. Either they think it's not possible, or they think it's not aspirational, that you can't do a good job in 40 hours, so you shouldn't even attempt to try that as a teacher. I believe that not only is a 40-hour work week possible for teachers, but that most teachers can do an excellent job as an educator working those hours. I believe that because I lived it during my 11 years in the classroom. Even as a new teacher, I would say that probably around 90% of the time, I worked a 40-hour week. And I maintained that schedule no matter what or where I've taught. I've taught in 7 different schools. I've taught 3 different grades. I've taught in 2 different states, 3 different districts. And I managed to keep my work hours to a reasonable level that really worked for my life in all of those different teaching contexts. My friends and my colleagues and really anyone who was paying attention can attest that I left the building about an hour after the kids did every afternoon, and I took very little work home. But I never really talked about it until after I left the classroom and became an instructional coach, because telling people about how few hours you work is really not a smart idea most of the time. So many people equate hours worked with results. And they just seem to believe that like staying at school until dinner time every night, doing who knows what, somehow means that students are going to be learning more. This is a really pervasive myth, and I'm going to debunk it with you right now. Hours worked does not equate with results. I want you to think about the teachers in your building, your colleagues. The vast majority of them are going to fall into one of 4 categories when it comes to hours worked and results. The first type is ineffective or average teachers who work short hours. These are the teachers who are not really invested in the job. Some of them just want a paycheck, but most of them, I think, really do care deep down. They're just burned out and disillusioned from just all the crap they face every day in their jobs. And many of them are also going through really intense personal issues that make it impossible for them to give 100% to their work. They're caring for an elderly parent, they have a sick spouse, they have multiple young children at home, and so on. So these teachers put in the least amount of hours at work as possible. And while I'm empathetic, they are the ones who inadvertently perpetuate the myth that teachers need to work 70-hour weeks to be effective. We look at these ineffective and average teachers and think, I don't want to be seen as one of them. I care about my job. I'm working really hard every day. I have to prove that by being the last one out of the parking lot and dragging home a rolling tote full of paperwork every night. But let's dig deeper here. I'm sure you also know in your school a second type of teacher, these ineffective and average teachers who are chained to their desks for hours every afternoon. We all know those type of teachers. They work really long hours because they want to do a good job, but they don't manage their time well. They work incessantly, but not on the right things, and not on things that produce results in the classroom. They care about their students, they want them to do well, but they've just gotten bogged down in everything from mandated paperwork to Pinterest pressure and wanting their classrooms to look perfect. So they're putting in tremendous effort, but they aren't seeing tremendous learning gains in their classrooms. And in fact, their students really aren't learning any more than the students who have teachers who leave right at 3 p.m. every day. These teachers' hearts are in the right place, but they're wasting time and they don't even know it. So we have ineffective and average teachers who work short hours and ineffective and average teachers who work long hours. As you can see, the difference in their workload does not equate to results. None of them are really excelling or doing great things for kids. They're treading water. They're keeping up with what's expected, but just barely. This is not a life we want to aspire to. So now let's look at the outstanding teachers, the ones we all want to be like, and let's examine their workloads. The third type of teacher is the outstanding teacher who works very long hours. Every school has at least a few of these superstars. They're the type of teacher where you wish your own kid could be in that teacher's class, but you would never actually want to be that teacher yourself. These teachers do all the committee work, and they pick up the slack for everyone else. The third type of teacher is the outstanding teacher who works very long hours. Every school has at least a few of these superstars. They're the type of teacher where you want your own kid to be in their class, but you never actually want to be that teacher yourself. These are the teachers that do all the committee work, and they pick up the slack for everyone else. These teachers are great at what they do, but they're exhausted, and they're missing their families, and they're not taking care of themselves because work always comes first. And despite this, these are the teachers that we compare ourselves to. We make ourselves feel guilty for not being like them. But we have to really be honest with ourselves about how they live, not just how they teach, but their quality of life overall. I admire these kinds of teachers' practice, but it's not the type of life that I want to live. I'm not willing to sacrifice my health for my job, period. I want to have a life apart from school. Some of these truly dedicated teachers enjoy being 100% into their work all the time. Often they're young and single, or they're older empty nesters, and they enjoy being busy with their greatest passion of teaching. And many of us have had a season like that in our lives, but it's not something that most of us can or even should want to maintain for decades. We can't compare ourselves to other teachers who are in that season of life and feel like we need to work more hours to be like them. It's this fourth and last type of teacher that I believe is worth emulating. These are the outstanding teachers who work reasonable hours. They've perfected their systems. They've amassed tons of great lessons and resources already, and they don't waste time on things that don't matter. These teachers hear about a new mandate or curriculum or set of standards, and they just shrug. They know they're going to find a way to make it work. It's not going to undo them. They don't waste time thinking and complaining about things they can't control. They love their students and the families they serve, and they go above and beyond for them. But they have clear and healthy boundaries around their time and energy. This is the type of teacher that I always strive to be, and that you can become too. There aren't a lot of these teachers out there because work-life balance is a tough thing to maintain. But these teachers do exist. And if you start talking about time management with people, I think you will find that there may be some in your midst that you didn't even know about. I personally have had conversations about this with at least 40 or 50 teachers that manage to be truly outstanding without letting teaching consume their entire lives. This is not an isolated phenomenon. The teachers I know who are managing to do this teach in all different parts of the country, all different grade levels, K to 12, public and private school, rural areas, inner cities, everything in between. So I can say with confidence that it is possible to be a great teacher and have a great personal life because I've done it. And I know other teachers who are doing it right now as we speak. And I'm not sharing this to make you feel bad because you work too many hours, and so does everyone you know, but to give you hope. It is possible to do a great job teaching in fewer hours. Now, when I talk about a 40-hour work week, I don't mean that I never think about teaching outside of those 40 hours. Not at all. Teaching is my passion. I enjoy being a connected educator and chatting with other teachers online and finding and sharing ideas. I enjoy creating materials for kids and making new activities and center materials. I love decorating and organizing a classroom. So I don't count those activities as part of the 40-hour week. And I say that not to create a loophole, but because those are things that I genuinely enjoy. And I do them voluntarily when I feel like doing them. They don't feel like work to me. They're the creative side of teaching that I do as a hobby, which I'm passionate about. I have no resentment at all about reading teacher blogs and getting lesson ideas on my iPad in the evening when I'm watching TV with my husband. I'm talking about limiting the work tasks to 40 hours a week. I'm talking about the face-to-face time with kids. First off, it's fantastic, but let's be honest, it's definitely work. It's very tiring to be in front of a class, and it's not optional. You've got to show up. You've got to do it every day from one certain time to another time. So that's included in the 40 hours. And I'm talking about limiting the work for tasks that I don't enjoy. So the paperwork, making photocopies, attending meetings, grading, data collection, returning parent emails. These are all the kinds of tasks that I don't get a lot of pleasure from. These are the kinds of tasks that I resented having to do in my evenings and weekends on my own time. So these are the work tasks which I limited to my 40-hour week. So if you figure 6 hours of instructional time with kids every day, that's about 30 hours a week. To meet my goal of working a 40-hour week, that meant that all the work tasks needed to be done in about 10 hours a week on average. And most of the time for me, that was a possibility. Not at the beginning of the school year, not when report cards are due, not when you have special projects and deadlines and things. But on average, most weeks, I aimed for a 40-hour work week, and you can too. So here's a very general plan for doing that. If you are currently working way more than 40 hours, 60 or more hours a week, that's not uncommon. And I recommend going really slow with this. Cutting 20 hours from your work week is going to be just way too hard to do overnight. You're going to want to just take off 30 minutes or so at a time through new routines. Get in that place where you feel like you're comfortable, and then integrate another streamlined routine that allows you to cut another 30 minutes off your work week. Do that for a week, and then add another strategy that shaves off another 15 minutes or 20 minutes, and so on. Over time, I believe most teachers can shave 10 or more hours off an extreme work week. So, what are those streamlining strategies? How do you cut down on tasks? I think the best approach is to think about the top 3 things that consume your evenings and weekends. The things for work that you absolutely hate doing. The things that you bring home in your teaching bag, and half the time you just drag them right back to school untouched because you couldn't even bear to look at them over the weekend. And then pick one of those 3 things. Pick the one that bugs you the most and consumes the most of your time, and start experimenting with different strategies for doing that task more efficiently. Let's talk grading, for example, since that's a task that most teachers hate having to do on their own time. Can you grade papers at a different time of day? Maybe you usually try to grade during your planning time and you get interrupted every 5 minutes, so it takes you 3 times as long. And your prep period's so short you really can't get into a flow. You might be better off coming into school early 2 days a week and grading papers all in one big stretch when no one else is in the building to interrupt you. Or maybe the time saver for you is to change some of your expectations around grading and retrain yourself to believe that every single assignment you give students does not have to be graded. You might be recording way more than the required number of grades per subject each week. And it's time to get real with yourself about how you're creating extra unnecessary work. I know elementary teachers who take 15 or more grades in a single subject every single week, even though only 5 grades are required. That's like 70 grades per week per child. It's insanity. But they've convinced themselves that they have to do it because they believe they need as many grades as possible and they have to put a score on every piece of paper that a child touches. So if you're spending too much time grading, you might want to experiment with these kinds of things and rethink some of these assumptions you have. Try different techniques for scoring and holding kids accountable for their work. Try having them assess their own work as a review activity in class. Try incorporating fewer paper and pencil activities. Have kids do more hands-on work or solve problems on individual dry erase boards where you can assess their learning informally as they go rather than having them complete a worksheet that you have to grade. There are a lot of different ways to approach teaching and assessment, and if what you're doing is not working well for you from a time management perspective, don't assume that this is just the way things have to be and there's no alternative. Start actively looking for and experimenting with ways to teach and assess more effectively. There are other teachers who spend very little time grading, so why shouldn't you be one of them? Why should you have to lug a stack of essays home every single night? Why should you spend every weekend grading and ignoring your own children? That does not have to be your reality. But if something's going to change, it has to be intentionally. That workload is not going to disappear magically overnight. It's going to require you acknowledging that this is a real problem that is affecting your health. It's affecting your personal life, your family life, and then making a decision to figure out how to change. Now, you might not ever get to a 40-hour work week. It might not be possible with your teaching context or your personality or your work speed and habits, but you can shave multiple hours off your work week. I believe that is possible for every teacher. We are all wasting time in some way without realizing it. We're all completing certain routine tasks in really ineffective and inefficient ways. We all have processes that we can streamline. And if you can identify even a few of them and improve them, you're looking at saving a couple hours a week. That's 2 or 3 or 5 or even 10 extra hours to enjoy your family and take care of yourself and pursue things that you enjoy. It's worth making the effort and really taking the time to focus on this because it will change the way you teach forever. You will be a better teacher because you're not resentful of the way it's consumed your life, and you'll be better rested and more balanced. I think you owe it to yourself and your kids and your family to seriously consider the possibility of cutting down your work week to a healthier number of hours. It's an investment in your life and in your lifestyle. So I'm in the process right now of creating some resources to help you with this. Go to my website, thecornerstoneforteachers.com/S208. That's for season 2, episode 8. thecornerstoneforteachers.com/S208. And at the bottom of the blog post for this episode, you'll see a place to enter your email address. It's going to take you 5 seconds, and I'm going to send you more information about how to pick a target number of hours to work each week, something that's realistic for you, and how to make a plan for sticking to it, how to create those boundaries around your time so that you don't work more hours than you planned. And I'm also going to send you information about a new support network that I'm starting for teachers. It's called the 40-Hour Workweek Club, and it's designed to share specific, actionable steps for shaving 10 or more hours off your work week. The club includes a private Facebook group where you can share time-saving strategies with other teachers and figure out how to personalize a system that really works for you. I'd like to leave you with a motivational quote for the week ahead that I call the takeaway truth. Here's the takeaway truth I want you to remember this week. You will never find time for anything. If you want time, you must make it. And that's from Charles Buxton. You will never find time for anything. If you want time, you must make it. Remember, effective teaching is measured in results, not hours worked. Seek efficiency and create boundaries around your time. Thanks for listening. Have a fantastic week. You can do this. And remember, it's not going to be easy. It's going to be worth it. Truth for Teachers is a proud member of the Education Podcast Network. Podcasts for educators, podcasts by educators. For more great podcast recommendations, go to edupodcastnetwork.com. That's edupodcastnetwork.com.